The original Season 3, Episode 14, A Streetcar Named Desire. Now, because this was actually a crossover event that they were doing for this week with the Vampire Diaries, as well as the originals, I will be talking about some stuff that's actually fairly relevant, I feel, to the originals. I'm not going to do like a double review like I did with the season premieres or anything, because it wasn't like a huge crossover like I was kind of expecting it to be. It was kind of just a mini thing, to be totally honest. Like, you know, with Stephan in this episode, he was in it, he helped out a little bit, and that was pretty much it. And I feel like Klaus was in the originals, or in the Vampire Diaries, more than Stephan was even in the originals, which is kind of odd, because it's like they spent more time together in that bar than they did this whole episode, which I thought was kind of funny. But I thought this was a fun episode. It was actually a really good episode, because not only was some stuff that kind of carried over from the Vampire Diaries very interesting, which I'll definitely get to that, but the stuff that they're doing right now, or that they did in this episode, was really freaking sweet. I mean, they ended a lot of big stuff. We have the sire line broken for Klaus, but not Elijah. We have Aya killed off because she wanted to die. She wanted to be killed off because she was, so attached to Elijah. And I thought it was a great scene, the way that they did that, where she's like, if you were basically, constrained to a certain man, wouldn't you want to break free as well, even if it meant death? And I thought that was great, and he couldn't do it because he still cared about her. But then Haley comes up behind her and just, stabs her straight through, and it's like, this is more mercy, than Jackson ever got. And I was like, that was a crazy scene. I didn't expect that to happen. Marcel and Davina aren't exactly on good terms anymore, because Marcel didn't think she'd be able to succeed, which clearly we saw that she was. And I'm assuming, obviously if it's, two originals rather than one, it's still more magic, but considering she was able to pull it off in general, I'm pretty sure she would have been able to separate Elijah as well. So I love the way that that played out, where he's like, we got to stop this, because he wasn't 100% confident that she'd be able to survive, or that, she'd be able to pull it off. And if they did that test, then he would be gone. And I understand how she could be upset and stuff, and I'm like, if it's my life on the line, I'd be much more willing to just have someone not in the situation at all than to have you, try, to get that person out of it. And fortunately, he's unsired, because it did end up working for him. So he is unsired from Klaus, so good for him. But like I said, when your life is on the line, and it's like, because of course I isn't going to test it on her sire, so, it just makes sense. But, when your own life is on the line, it's like, you can have all the confidence you want. I need to survive. I need to know that I'm going to survive. And that was his 100% idea. It's like, if we get him out of here, I don't have to wonder if you'll succeed. I can believe that you will, but that's not knowing that you will. So I'm totally on Marcel's side, because it was his life. As much as Davina's upset that he didn't believe in her, I'd be like, that sucks for you, but I'm alive. And that's what needed, that was like the main thing. It was like, I need to be alive. And, it would save Josh as well. It's like, you can have all the hope that you want or believe in yourself, but that's an insanely powerful thing. It's a thing that had never been done before. And, honestly, I was surprised it did work, to be totally honest. I was completely surprised. I was really glad that it did, because now that they've unsired someone, Klaus is like a crazy target. But I was like, man, it is a spell that didn't exist, or, hasn't been broken since literally the first vampires were ever created. And it's like, that's a big deal for someone to take on with some other random witches who I don't believe have any connection to their ancestors. They're all kind of, sort of just like wayward witches. So it's like, I was kind of on Marcel's side. I wasn't too confident that it would work. But I'm glad it did, because, like I said, leads to a very awesome moment where Klaus is now untethered from all his sires, and he could easily be a big target, which I guess he won't be, because basically everyone is taken care of in this episode, because not only is Aya taken out as far as Elijah's sire line by Haley, but Klaus gets Aurora, he blocks her up. Lucian, we find out, was actually betrayed by Aurora, and he was basically drained, so that's why he hasn't been anywhere in any of the episodes, because she had him locked up in her little area, because they had a disagreement on how to kind of go about things, because if I remember right, what he said was basically she was so pissed, she was just going to kill him anyway, or kill Klaus anyway, and it's like, I'm sire to that guy, I can't have you kill him, because that'll kill me. And she's like, too bad, and so she, knocks him out and kind of waits for her opportunity. But, it's kind of cool to get him back, and we find out he's, okay, he's not going to, try to take down Klaus. I'm assuming he won't change now that he's been unsired. I'm assuming he'll still be on Klaus's side, but he doesn't need to be. So, who knows? Allegiances can easily change now. And that was something, like I mentioned when they first brought it up, Marcel could be separated from Klaus, and now he is. And who knows what that means? He might try to get his city back, and we'll just have to see, where that goes. But it was just really awesome. Aya's gone, Aurora's locked up, Tristan is back in, back to realizing that he's drowning over and over again, which is a really horrible fate. But they kind of go, that's the second time they've done that, because it happened to Stephan in the Vampire Diaries, I think it was like 3 seasons ago when the doppelganger stuff came in. But, I liked how they played around with that idea where he was actually saved by the witches, so he doesn't realize that he's drowning and dying over and over again. He kind of, he's alone, but at least he isn't really suffering. He has like this fancy place, and there's chests, and there's art, and instruments, and weapons, and all this other stuff. And then we got the ending where they killed everyone off. They like killed all the witches except for Davina, I believe, and then they killed Aya. And then it's, it's breaking down, and we see him like spit up the water and stuff. I was like, man, that's a crappy way to suffer. But considering he was one of the bad guys, like, you care a lot less. Basically, none for him. He was always the villain, but he was always such a douche to me that I was just like, I don't even care a little bit. Like, it's just kind of how I felt. But I just love the way that they played around with that idea. I was annoyed by the fact that Klaus and Elijah were just walking around talking to them, but I guess based on how they showed it, but they never officially say this, but based on what happened when Freya shows up in the area and she uses her magic to break the items, I'm assuming that was the only way that they could destroy it. But they kind of made it seem like if you find whatever you're linked to, you can just smash it and you get out of there. Because that's how Aurora made it seem, was like you break what represents you, like, and then you're out. Or at least that's what Klaus said. Like, she's like, something in here represents all of us. And the first thing Klaus said was like, oh, we find it, and then we break it, and we're free. And then they spent the whole episode walking around and talking like, how'd you feel about this, and how'd you feel about that? I would have just been like a tornado just running through the whole thing, just destroying the place. And they're just like, oh, let's look at this, and let's check this out. And he walks up to the katanas, and that was like the first thing they say is like, oh, maybe I got a little too close to what represents me, because if I break these blades, I'll be free. But then they spend the whole episode just sitting around talking like, maybe this is me, like the king, like squeeze it in your hand and find out, and stuff like that. So that annoyed me a little bit just going through the whole episode, because they certainly said it through dialogue that they could destroy the items themselves within this sort of alternate world, and they'd be freed. But they spent the whole episode just talking it up, and then Freya finally comes in to save them, and she's able to get to both of them actually. But Davina was already so far in, she was able to get Klaus still. But that really bothered me. I was like, why are they just talking? It was a very TV moment, and it's just like, it's something that happens all the time, especially with stuff that involves vampires, because they all have super speed. So it always annoys me where it's like, they could easily have just solved this. And I wish someone would just write a show where it's like, they just use their super speed all the time, because it's dumb not to. But this is probably worse, because they flat out said it in the beginning, like, oh, we find what represents us, we break it, done. And then they spent 30 minutes talking, and then it's like, oh no, it started. Like, yeah, probably wouldn't have if you just, went around shattering everything. So that was kind of annoying and stuff like that. I do have to mention this, of course, because, the whole Invisiblekatana thing. When they used the katanas, when I was looking at it, I was like, those look super thick. Like, that looked way too thick. It could have been a real one, but, because that certainly could have just, because it's the back. Sometimes they look thick, or sometimes they just are, that thick. But it looked, really thick for a katana blade. So I don't know if that was really a real one. I kind of doubt that it was, because it just looked way too thick. But it could have also just been the angle as well. And it's like, I can't really see it from front and back. so I can kind of compare how thin the front looked to how the back looked. But it looked a little thick to me, just to put my 2 cents in there, because I feel like I always have to whenever blades are involved. But I still enjoyed it, despite, you know, them just sitting around. It ultimately led to a great moment where at least one of the sire lines was untethered. I was mixing up my words. So I really enjoyed that. I thought it was very cool. And now Klaus does have a target on him. And they have the gun, so seemingly no worries there, because they could, I would assume they could just put the bullets, because the bullets are still made out of wood. They probably have like a metal casing on the back so that they can actually be shot out once the pin hits the back of the, you know, casing. But they have the gun now, because Elijah had it at the very end, and when he couldn't use it on Aya, and so they have the weapon. You know, he might be unsired. I don't know why I keep mixing sired and tethered, but he might be unsired from the rest of his people. But Klaus kind of doesn't need to worry. He doesn't have a target on his back, at least not with anything that could actually kill him anymore, unless this prophecy is going to continue. Because they talk about it in this episode. They kind of show the Rebecca thing again, which I don't know if Elijah ever said this out loud, but they kind of just have him and Freya talking, and she's like, "Oh, since you daggered Rebecca," and I'm like, "Oh, I guess they did that between scenes," because I don't remember him mentioning that to anyone, that he did that to kind of end that part of the prophecy. So I thought that was interesting when she came in. It's like, "Oh, so you daggered her and that got rid of the family thing," which it still doesn't, because I know they can say as much as they want, like, "Oh, I'd never kill my brother," and it just eliminates the possibility of it. But I'm like, I don't know about that. And we also have Cole, who has never truly been kind of on their side too much. I know Finn way more than the rest of the family. And they even talk about that, where Freya's like, "I channel Finn, but he kind of wants them both dead, so he doesn't really give a crap," which I thought was actually kind of funny. It was like, man, he's like, "I'm not helping them. Screw those guys." Particularly Klaus. So we do have Cole come back at the end of this episode in flesh and blood, which is actually kind of awesome that Davina was able to get Klaus and Elijah's blood and use Cole's ashes, and she brought him back to life. So now he's back. I'm assuming he's going to be a witch, because he died as a witch, and that was kind of like their big thing, is they constantly kind of referred to him as still being a witch since he died in that one guy's body. So he'll be in his original body, but I don't know if he'll be a witch or if he'll be an original anymore, because they kind of make it seem like he died as a witch, so he'll be brought back as one as well, despite being in his original form. So I'm curious to see how that is going to play out, if he will be an original again, or if he will be a witch still. But either way, I'm very excited for that, because now that Davina's kind of out on her own, because she doesn't want to be with Marcel anymore, it's the two of them together. And if he is still a witch, that could be very dangerous for some people, because you're going to have two witches coming after you, and they may or may not go back to Vincent. I kind of doubt it, because of just the way things kind of turned out, where he got her kind of kicked out as regent. But we'll see. Like, who knows what's going to happen with that. You know, two powerful witches, or a witch and an original working together, also an issue. So they can kind of cause some destruction if they choose to. But, you know, despite being upset with Marcel, there's really no reason to, like, go out and try to kill them. But she could definitely go after Klaus, because of everything that he's caused, and she's definitely tried to do it before, as did Cole, and that was like their whole plan. And, you know, that's kind of what led to them doing this current, you know, unsiring spell. So they might go right back to trying to kill Klaus, and that might actually be tough, and that could once again go in line with one by family sort of deal. So looking forward to how that plays out. Really enjoyed this episode. The sort of crossover element to it was cool, because Stephan was in there. He talked with Haley. I thought they had way more interaction, but when they were in the trunk, Haley kind of calls Stephan a stranger, and I was like, weren't they interacting like all the time when they were in that show? But I guess mostly she was, you know, with Tyler because of the whole werewolf thing. But I was like, it's weird that they call each other strangers. Like, I'm pretty sure they all knew, you know, they knew each other, you know, well enough at least. I mean, you know, weird stuff happens that I felt like they knew each other enough. So that kind of surprised me when she called him a stranger, and I was like, I thought they knew each other pretty well. Rain and Cruz does show up in like one scene in this episode, or 2 scenes, I guess. And she takes out a couple of the Strix. And then she kind of up and vanishes. I don't know what happened there. We kind of don't really see what happened with Stephan at all during that scene either, because it was just like, Stephan and Haley get in because Marcel lets them in, and then Raina shows up because she's following Stephan, or maybe she just knew that there was a big population, so maybe that was all it was. She just went there and was like, alright, killing all these guys, but I don't know, because they have this spell where we find out that he can't be tracked anymore, so maybe it was just like, oh, huge congregation of vampires, I'm just gonna, wipe out a couple dozen. And then she kind of just took off, I guess, because, her main target wasn't there. Because she has such a weird thing, it's like she follows specific targets until she kills them. And then she'll just find a new target, and then that's kind of how it goes. But she kind of up and vanished and took off. Stephan was fine, and so now he's leaving by the end of this episode. But not too much of a crossover there, and Klaus's parts in Vampire Diaries were totally about Caroline and how he still kind of has feelings for her and stuff like that, and how he wants Stephan to do right by her. But the big thing, as far as the crossover, as far as I'm concerned at least, that happened, was from the Vampire Diaries, because for this season, and odds are if you watch, you watch the originals, still watch the Vampire Diaries, but for anyone who doesn't, they're doing sort of a 3-year skip type of thing for most of the episodes at least. The first part of the first probably 3 or 4 minutes of each episode will have like a time skip, and it'll be like 3 years later, this is what's happening. And in the episode that premiered for the Vampire Diaries, Caroline went to New Orleans and she was going to drop off some people. I guess I won't spoil it just in case, but she was trying to help some people get protected. And we find out that Klaus hasn't been in New Orleans for 3 years, and so I don't know if that means at the end of this season he's going to take off because he has too many enemies or something like that, or what the case may be. Or maybe he's been daggered. Maybe he gets daggered by the end of the season. I really don't know. But this girl is just like, yeah, no one's heard from Klaus Michelson. I'm really mixing my words up today. But no one's heard from him for 3 years. And, it's 3 years. It's like a 3-year skip. So it's 3 years from like right now, or, really close to right now. So I don't know if it'll be the end of this season. Depending on what they do with the seasons, it could still be the same year within the next season as well. So they could definitely carry out, 3 years from now, can last for like 3 full seasons or something crazy like that, if they wanted to do it that way. But I don't know, because one of the things with the Vampire Diaries, because they keep doing these 3-year skips, it's kind of like they're going to have to stick 3 years in the future at some point, because they keep showing us 3 years from now. So they're going to have to do that full skip. And I don't know if that's going to carry over into the originals, because then if they do that, they can't do 3 years, a 3-year skip for the Vampire Diaries and then do those crossovers, unless they only bring in like one character at a time, because otherwise it would give out too much information as to what to expect from, the originals, because they reference certain stuff that may or may not have happened. So I don't know if that's going to kind of carry over and they're going to be skipping 3 years in the originals as well, which would be very interesting if they did. But that was something that really caught my attention, because he's been gone for 3 years. There's got to be a great reason for him to leave his home again. And I don't know if that's Marcel, kind of repeating things where he runs them out of town again, but they don't mention Elijah or anyone else. They only mention Klaus. So it could be all of them, or it could just be Klaus that's been run out of the city, or just chose to leave. But sometime soon, Klaus is gone for 3 years, at least 3 full years. So I don't know what that means for the originals, but it has me very curious what's going to be going down very soon. So really love, that was probably my favorite part of the whole crossover, because it was like, oh crap, they basically did a 3-year skip for the originals as well, which I never expected them to do. And so it's like, yep, he's been gone for 3 years. That's a really big deal, because, it's the originals. We already don't get to see Rebecca, nearly enough. So there's got to be a great reason. And if Klaus is gone, they probably would do a skip, because we'd only have Elijah and maybe his battle against Marcel, possibly. But I don't know. I wouldn't know what to expect, to be totally honest. I mean, it's just exciting to see. It's very curious, but I'm looking forward to it. I thought it was a really good episode. I was glad to see that 3-year skip in the crossover for Vampire Diaries, because now it's like something big is for sure going to be happening this season in the originals, or next season. Like I said, they can definitely cram like a full year into like 3 full seasons, because 12 months, they could do like 12 hours worth of stuff, and it could be like it could literally be 1 week if they wanted to write it that way. It could be 1 week within an entire season. They would never do that, because that would be the craziest week ever. It'd be like a movie where people never seem to sleep. It would be like that if they did it for the originals, but a lot of those people don't need to sleep anyway, honestly, so it probably could work, oddly enough. But I enjoyed this episode. I can't wait to see how things play out, because seemingly at this point, there are no villains. They kill, Tristan's been gone, and now he actually suffers. Aurora's been blocked up, and she's in a spell, so it's not like she can punch the bricks or anything like that. So she's spelled in. I was killed off by Haley, and I feel like honestly the only antagonist that could exist at this point truly is Davina and Cole. They're like the only two, and kind of based on the last season, that seems like the most likely possibility at this point, unless Cammy kind of turns back around and goes kind of full evil again. And I don't think Vincent's really giving a crap what anybody's doing, but he could become an antagonist, I guess, if he wanted to. But Vincent seems to be like, I'm just doing my own thing. I'm just helping my people. And all that crap is way over that way. So I don't think he'll be an antagonist. But who knows? I'm very excited because they did some really great stuff that's going to change the future of the series. For both of them, really, with the whole sire thing. Because I know that's going to be brought up. It has to be next week that's brought up. In the Vampire Diaries. Like, hey, I'm no longer tethered to Klaus. He can die. I'm totally fine. So, yeah, that was pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it, though. I thought this was a fun episode. Definitely some really good results, which I certainly enjoy. Because my girlfriend was kind of making fun of it. Because she hates the original. She does not like the actors that play Klaus and Elijah. And she just doesn't like them at all. So she doesn't bother with the show. And she was like, they're not going to do anything. They're going to get saved and stuff. And I was like, see? Because once everything kind of went crazy, I was like, see? They get results on here. Like, the Vampire Diaries, it's like, it's dragged out. But in the originals, it's like, done. Like, this happened. One got saved. One got unsired from the rest of his people. They killed off all the villains in this episode. And then they bring back Cole at the end. I'm like, see, they get results in the originals. And that's why I like it quite a bit better than the Vampire Diaries. Although I have really enjoyed this season. I think I've enjoyed this season more than I've enjoyed some of the other ones, to be totally honest, for the Vampire Diaries, because it's been pretty crazy, some of the stuff they're doing. But I really did enjoy this episode. Definitely want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I want to know what you guys think is going to happen to Klaus, because they do the 3-year skip. Something big. Did he take off? Too many targets? Those are kind of the only options I can think of, but I want to know what you guys think, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.